Merry meet.
I was compelled to make this video compilation of clips from internet videos and TV shows and documentaries about witchcraft, paganism, Gnosticism, and esoteric studies because I want to call attention to the presentation they are generally given. Most often it is implied that they involve the Christian devil or that it should be questioned whether or not the devil is behind it all. It is expected and even taken for granted that we should only ever approach these subjects questionably, and that we should seek the devil lurking somewhere in the background, as if all pagans are keeping a collective conspiratorial secret that they secretly serve him. Either that or that pagans and occult practitioners are being unwittingly guided by the devil, and it's up to good Christians to lead them away from it. This presumption is itself an imposition of religious thought, considering that such people decidedly ignore the fact that most pagans and occult practitioners do not acknowledge a being called Satan or the devil. We often get priests, preachers, and everyday Christians making claims such as, "You don't know what forces you're playing with," or "You don't understand what powers you're dealing with," or "You're dabbling in the occult." It's always "you don't understand" or "you don't know," never "I don't know" or understand. They are thus revealing their own level of misunderstanding or lack of knowledge or willingness to understand or know. Then the pagan or occultist offers to explain themselves and are again met with claims of devil worship. If a member of a popular religion who sees the devil in all pagan spirituality or occultism really wants to understand something outside of their own spiritual model, they have but to listen. In many such relevant documentaries or video presentations, there is sinister or discordant music playing in the background. They try to get us to take seriously the medieval ideas about witches and their craft, when that's not the reality behind the actual craft. The word witch means wise one, sometimes more specifically, wise woman. The word pagan means dweller in the country. The word occult means that which is hidden. Why hidden? Because it had to go into hiding, else the church's long-term policy of an ensuing death hunt should begin. The church has killed many ancient faiths and its adherents, and as if that wasn't enough, added insult to injury by an equally long-term effort to destroy even the memory of these ancient faiths and practices. Hypocritically, they then subsumed many of those practices that they killed into their own religion. For example, the miracle of turning water to wine was enacted at Fountain Court in Jerash, Jordan, before Christianity existed. These were the mysteries of Dionysus beside a temple of Artemis. The hat worn by Catholic popes resembles the head of a fish. This is no accident. The Babylonian priests, in honor of the god from the waters named Dagon, once dressed as fish men. And so, much is being condemned by Christianity, which is an intrinsic part of that very faith and religious enactment. The world's major religions today demonize nature-based religions, particularly those which honor woman and the divine feminine, and simultaneously ask us to consider holy one male figure. Unless, of course, we're talking about the two extremes of virgin or whore. People often like to cry BS, but offer no substantial argument to support their angry, bitter, frustrated, spiritually condescending, and presumptuous claims that all individual spiritual experience involving Gnostic enlightenment and work with witchcraft and seekers and adorers of the divine feminine are supposedly all just poor souls being misled by the devil. Sometimes they are treated fairly or even with respect. depending on the nature of the program or integrity of the host or producers. Today, the attempt continues to keep us ignorant of true religious history, just as medieval as well as the very earliest church fathers had hoped would be the case. An active deprivation of our full spiritual heritage. Do you want to understand? Well, here's your chance. Here are some examples of paganism and occultism in the media, including some voices of truth whom the powers that be have long tried to silence, as well as those who seek to keep it misunderstood.
I think one of the reasons why people fear the word witch so much is that it brings up ideas about women's power. And for 5,000 years or longer, we have been propagandized, really, to fear women's power, to fear female power, to see it as something negative, something to be afraid of, something destructive, something evil. And naturally, we have all those associations that come up with the word witch. That's why, for me, it's important to use that word, to bring it up, to say, look, let's bring out into the light all of this stuff. Let's look at it clearly and realize we don't have to fear it.
The actual religion of witchcraft is based on the universal religion of paganism, which is at the root of all civilizations. It's a prehistoric religion, and that gives us the sustenance to continue by linking in with the planetary and seasonal cycles and becoming at one with the planet. So most people involved in witchcraft tend to be ecologically minded. They tend to love animals and also be gregarious and willing to help and serve others. And that's as far removed from the image of Satanism as you could get. But bound up in the religion of witchcraft, there is also the practice of magic. And magic is a power. It's an abstract power. It's the power of genius and creativity which courses through the universe. It's nothing at all secular. It can be applied by anyone. And magic is the method or the technique whereby you apply that formula. It's not secular at all, so therefore the application of it is a question of technique rather than belief. Once you understand that magic does work, you can use it for all facets. There's been a lot of talk about black and white magic, and it's important to distinguish between the two. There isn't a generic kind of magic which is black. There is magic, pure and simple, but the use of it depends on the good taste of the operator. Now, unfortunately, there are people in creation, there must be room for them, for all potentialities. It's unfortunate that they do exist, who are more inclined towards the sinister aspects of magic, towards the darker aspects, primarily because it gives them either a vicarious thrill or an excuse for their own sexual abnormalities. So there's nothing wrong with that, providing they do not harm another. But unfortunately, because most of them are exhibitionists, they tend to be the ones that the newspapers get hold of, and that's the image that's been presented of occultism generally. Occultism is life itself to me. We are very committed people in what we do. We're not evangelical in the sense that we try to push it on other people, but we are here as an access point so that people can reach out to us. We never refuse any inquiries at all. And living without occultism, to me, is really like trying to run a race with one leg. It's impossible. The sole criterion in magic is that it should work. There's an old witchcraft tenet which says that the goddess offers certainty, not faith. And that's very important. So it's jam now, not tomorrow. It's a strange thing, but unless you have experienced magic work, you don't believe it. It is only a potential, it's a possibility. But the moment that you do experience it, it changes your whole life, and very much to the good. The potential of it, I mean, think of it, if you haven't worked magic and you work a piece of magic and it works, the potentials are unlimited, and that is what people are doing. They're striving to complete themselves. It's their birthright, and it should not be denied them.
I believe that the federal government, any government, is subject to the laws of God, no matter what you or anybody else says. That's
well,
the problem
with that, Professor Martin, is that not everybody is in agreement on what the laws of God are. Huh?
Well,
Isn't that a...
I think that from a standpoint of Judeo-Christian religion, that's the perspective we're talking about. Yes, we are.
My question is to the professor. If they have their beliefs to be witches, why would you doubt them or down them? I mean, I'm a Christian, I'm a Baptist. I believe that people should be what they want to be. If they want to be witches or want to lead lives as witches, why not let them be witches and let them believe what they want to believe and you believe what you want to be? That's not right to down.
All right. Let's get the record straight. From the earliest days of Christianity, it was the craft, the old witches, who were against the Christian gospel. They attacked Christianity. Christianity responded by saying, we are representing God and the Lord Jesus Christ.
That's why more than 15,000 people were burned.
Oh, well, let's get that one straight, too. Are you going to say that Christianity and all Christians have persecuted the witches? Because if you are, some Jews living at the time of Jesus of Nazareth betrayed him. He was crucified. They were responsible for the crucifixion and for what happened to him. Does that make all Jews responsible? No. So all Christians aren't responsible either. I'm sick to death of that old witches.
Well, but on the other hand, it just seems that it makes God an awfully stern taskmaster.
No, it makes him a just judge. Don't you want a just judge?
You know,
Why do all judges have to be male, Phil?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, I think it's very condescending of dear old...
To be sure.
God is not male. Where'd you ever get that crazy idea?
Well, because you keep saying
God
he,
is spirit.
the Lord.
God the Father. I mean, you believe in the Trinity. God the Father is...
God is spirit, Jesus said.
All right.
And the terms Father and Son only express his
Another
relationship
question,
to
if I
us.
can.
I know. I can't. What's your question?
Doesn't it seem logical? Isn't reincarnation really the answer? Doesn't it seem like a God in heaven would say to you, go back and do it again until you get it right?
Yeah. We'll be back in just a moment. Is the caller there?
Yes. Did I understand Professor Martin correctly when he said that our country was based on the Judeo-Christian religion?
That is absolutely correct. It has been traced back into virtually all the founding fathers who were either professing Christians or were in harmony with the Bible.
What troubles you about that?
Well, I do not practice any religion at all. I was brought up Catholic and I left the church quite a while ago. It bothers me that the professor and people similar to him have a more or less know-it-all attitude. They feel that they are right, and I really think that they try to push it on those of us who still have an open mind.
Do you think it's possible to have a religion without selling it?
Yes, we have one.
I do.
Oh, listen, I want you to understand something. What you are right now, you are by choice. I'm not trying to argue with you.
But hear her point. She's saying that there is nothing in the Constitution which obliges an American to be a religion or to be a member of a religion or a religious person or to believe in God or not to believe in God.
I didn't say that.
Okay, but when you say that it was founded on the Judeo-Christian...
It was. It was absolutely. You know, I mean, let's face the fact.
I think we had a few Amerindians who might disagree.
Look, she wants all the benefits of America, which was the product of the Judeo-Christian theology, but she doesn't want the theology.
Yes, I think we can agree that the people who framed the Constitution, many of the folks who framed the Constitution were influenced by the Judeo-Christian.
But you've got to be a little careful because a few of them were.
You do, yes.
Well, on one hand, you say you love them and you pray for the witches, and on the other hand, you're trying to stomp them out. Now, what do you want to do, for them or to them?
I didn't say that.
Well, this is the
I'm not trying to
impression I'm
stomp them out.
getting.
I say that we as Christians have a right to speak out against witchcraft just as much as they have a right to try and sell it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we agree.
If witchcraft doesn't hurt you, why speak out against it? Why don't you just let it?
Because God,
what do you
because God said in His Word that we were supposed to oppose evil, and that's all I'm doing.
God says you shan't eat pork too.
Yes.
I want to. No. Yes, He does. It's back in the.
You haven't read your New Testament.
Yes, I think it's a lot of hogwash.
You do. Tell me.
Just what I said.
Now, that's what they said. That's what they said about the Lord, you know, when He came down.
Oh, come on, you're not going to equate the Lord with this ooh-ah stuff.
We chanted, huh? Has there ever been a Has there ever been a religion that we didn't laugh at, make fun of, ridicule? Well, think about it. Remember the Shakers in England? You know, they used to shake. They threw them in jail. Threw them in jail.
The thing I like to say is, don't knock what you haven't tried. Once you've tried a healing and it's worked, then suddenly, you know, you begin to understand what we're doing.
Yvonne and Gavin Frost are witches, and they've been joined by Professor Walter Martin.
From its beginning, witchcraft has been occultic. It has always been associated with Satan. And whether a person, let me finish.
No,
whether
I will not abide that.
Well, I have
Go
to finish.
ahead now.
Okay,
Go ahead. I've made my statement.
It has historically been connected with Satan. That does not mean that a person in witchcraft automatically is demon-possessed or anything like that. It simply means that a person can be honest and sincere and dedicated and absolutely wrong. And the Judeo-Christian religion is opposed vigorously to witchcraft as a form of Satanism.
Well, I think they're upset about your reference to Satan because they see Satan as a Christian invention. Satan is the Antichrist, and they don't believe in Christ. So they certainly, they say, cannot believe in Satan.
Well, you have to go back a little bit further than that.
Yeah.
Satanism goes back to the book of Job in the Bible, which is a very, very old book, which antedates all of the things they're talking about.
No, it doesn't.
No, it does
Absolutely
not. You haven't done your
The cave
homework,
paintings
Dr.
in
Martin.
Spain are way before.
Okay, hang on a minute. Yes,
I think
ma'am.
I have done my homework, that's why I'm here. Yeah, but what has to be understood is that witchcraft isn't just what you're seeing here. Witchcraft is seances, tarot cards, communications with the dead, all of the things which God forbid in the Old Testament.
No, I disagred.
Can I finish?
No. Well,
I'll let you talk. Let me talk, all right?
interrupt me.
I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to be courteous.
All right.
The fact
We're
is,
trying to be courteous.
the fact is that witchcraft is not just we over a candle and the altar and the bell and the book and all the rest of the things associated with it. Actually, it is a very ancient form of religion which is polytheistic, believing in many gods, was opposed by the law, the prophets, Moses, the apostles, the Lord Jesus Christ. What we are getting here is a modern revival of an old poison with a new label. And it's spiritually dangerous.
I will not abide it.
That's the Christian church's position. You can disagree.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Now, that, I think, sums it up. But
Why would you
in
be
the
so
Bible,
upset at his negative review of your...
Well,
We've heard it
because
all
of the
before.
Bible.
Well, but he's heard your condemnation of Christianity
Well,
before. I mean,
let's take 1 Corinthians.
isn't it a shame, really, that we're into this argument and
I
bickering and
hate
fighting?
it. I hate
Well,
it.
why hate it? I mean, allow the man to make his point. It's obviously, we're not demanding that
Then
you
don't
agree with
reply
him.
to it.
No. It's not so much that as it is sort of a... the witches themselves are not getting along with each other. We've got boundaries.
Well, you don't have to be a witch to heal. There's a whole lot of Christian charismatic healers who are doing great work.
Whoa, stop
Sorry?
right there. There is no connection between charismatic Christians who employ God, the Holy Spirit, and witches who employ all kinds of gods and goddesses. Now, there's just no equation whatsoever.
What kind of curses do you put on other people? What kind of curses?
We don't deal in that kind of negativity. We really don't.
I'm sorry.
One of our basic beliefs is, and it harm none, do what you will. And that none includes yourself and includes the psyche of other people.
You know what's fascinating? This is you've made this available to us, Religious Requirements and Practices. This is a handbook for chaplains, which is published by the Department of the Army. I don't know if it's a current, but, and it's to assist chaplains in the event of tragedy, death of one of the troops. And if the troop happens to be a witch, we are ready to take care of them in the service. The American Council of Witches, there's an explanation of what witchery is, what a Wicca is, what a coven is, and what kind of burial is preferred. So...
Well, the same is true virtually for any religious
Yes,
group.
it is. But the point is, I think it's admirable, really, that the United States Army would make it its business to ensure that those who are sincerely devoted to witchery be appropriately accommodated at a moment of crisis.
We're tax deductible too, Phil.
You are. Literally, you are.
I think anybody wants to restrict, as an American, the right of a person to be a witch or practice any other religion they want.
Right.
What we object to, at least in Christianity and Judaism, is any attempt to make it look as if there's any agreement or that this has not its ground in satanic power. Because Anton LaVey of the First Church of Satan, I think he was on your program one time.
Yeah, long time.
He said, and I agree with him, he said, really, there's only witchcraft. He said black and white is a misnomer. There's only two poles of power. Either it is God or it is the devil. God has nothing to do with witchcraft.
Well, we totally disagree, and we don't get
But give them the opportunity to disagree, yeah. Is the caller there?
Yes, I'm the caller.
Yes, go ahead.
I thoroughly believe that these people are of the devil, of Satan.
Really?
I believe in Jesus Christ and God. If they had once mentioned that Jesus Christ heals.
Why don't we just, do they trouble you?
Oh, I think it's a disgrace.
Well, what's going to happen? What will happen? Outside of your baby not being fed while you're talking about it.
Babysitter.
Yeah, are you praying for these folks?
I pray for everyone.
I see.
Everyone.
Yeah. But you really feel that they are emissaries of the devil. The devil has sent them. Is that it?
I believe that.
Yeah.
Satan.
Okay.
Kabbalah sees God in terms of numbers, okay? And there are some very, very important characteristic numbers in the Kabbalah that are the same numbers that are important to us in the tarot. And as a matter of fact, the perfection that's exhibited in these numbers in the Kabbalah is the same perfection that makes tarot cards such a perfect vehicle, a perfect instrument for divination. And when you get involved in the tarot and you start drawing numbers and getting messages from God from license plates and condom boxes and you want to share this information about how everything is connected to everything else, you want to share it with your friends, don't. They won't care as much as you do, and they'll think you're a little crazy. So take it all the way to the end and really go crazy, and then they'll see a changed you, and that will be the way you share your Kabbalah with people.
Life is often likened to a journey in which obstacles are faced and options chosen. The images of the tarot deck reflect the stages and the challenges of this journey. To the uninitiated, the tarot cards are just pictures. To the trained reader, they are a language. The reader is the translator, the intermediary who tells the querents, as those seeking the reading are called, what their cards mean. Tarot readers are trained to identify every level of meaning in the images. Learning to read tarot requires dedication and practice. Bob Place finds that the best readers combine knowledge of the cards with intuition.
To read tarot cards is a talent, but you can learn. I believe that all a talent is an aptitude. So some people have more aptitude than others, just like for art. Anyone can learn to draw, but not everyone is going to draw like Leonardo da Vinci. You must learn about the symbols and the wisdom tradition behind the symbols and what the symbols mean. But then you must make the leap of faith. You must make the intuitive decision, and that intuition, which is just basically looking at the pictures and telling a story.
The Gypsies, nomadic people who moved across Europe and parts of Asia, are sometimes credited with first realizing the fortune-telling possibilities of the tarot. They were known to be card players and gamblers, but they were also experts in mysticism and magic. In previous centuries, it was the Gypsies to whom Europeans turned to have their future told, with questions about health, happiness, marriage, and love. In just this way, many people now turn to tarot readers, and their questions are still the same.
They called her an evil witch, but a Houston woman says all she wants to do is practice her religion and get custody of her children. Isaiah Carey has this story you'll see only on Fox and joins us now with the exclusive. Isaiah.
Well, Melinda, a bitter battle played out in a Harris County family courtroom this afternoon that put a woman's religious beliefs of Wiccan on center stage. And Sylvia Ruiz held nothing back as she terminated those who she said let her down.
It was a custody battle that had one surprise after another. At the center, Martin Ruiz and his soon-to-be ex-wife, Sylvia.
They say, oh yeah, she's a witch in the bad way.
And there lies the problem. Sylvia and Martin, who have 3 children together, have been married for 20 years, but things started to change, and so did Sylvia's religion. She converted from Catholicism to Wiccan.
Nobody can tell me what to do or what to believe.
Martin wants custody of their children because of his wife's Wiccan beliefs, while Sylvia believes she's being scrutinized more in the court system because of that religious choice. That's why, without notice Wednesday, she fired her attorney on the spot, asked Judge Robert Newey to recuse himself, and attempted to fire her children's attorney.
I've been a good mother, you know, and they have nothing to put on me. So they just looking for something, you know, some spot on my name as a mother.
Martin is a practicing Catholic, and the most he has at his home, he says, is his shrine to the Virgin Mary. But he says this frightens him and his children. Martin says it's his wife's Wiccan shop and makeshift temple at the back of their Spring Branch home. He took us inside, and there were pentagrams, oils, powders, bones, and an assortment of items I couldn't describe.
Crazy people come here to see her, and my kids is here. Is what I'm like.
Martin maintains his wife charges for various Wiccan-type services, from $60 for card readings to $200 to get rid of bad spirits. He says people lie on the floor in the Wiccan shop naked while they're being treated for their spiritual ailments, and that's why he doesn't want his children around.
All those years of work, of effort, of everything. My kids, they are great kids.
But Sylvia maintains there's nothing wrong with her choice of religion. She points to Martin, saying for 15 years he's been an absentee father.
I would say he was with us 5 years out of 20. He used to work in another state, you know, and just come here, stay here with us like 2 weeks, go to Mexico.
Difficult situation. Now, since Sylvia fired her attorney and asked the judge to step down, which he will do, there's no word how long this case will drag on. And remember, stuck in the middle are 3 children. We'll keep you updated.
Let's talk about this morning. The PC police are at it again because there's Wiccans and pagans out there, right? Probably, I don't know if they make up a large percentage of the population.
I do. They don't.
They don't?
No.
They don't.
No, they don't.
And at the
there are more
University...
Zoroastrians here than there are Wiccans.
But apparently maybe at the University of Missouri they make up such an exorbitant part of their population at the University of Missouri that they need to have all of their holidays now recognized.
And they have a ton of holidays. This is now the bad side of Wiccanism is it's obviously a form of witchcraft, but the upside is you get a ton of holidays. 20% of all school holidays, as described by the University of Missouri, are Wiccan holidays. 20% of all.
Well, and this is a statement from the University of Missouri. This is why they say they're doing this. The information about the Wiccan and pagan holidays has been in the guide since last fall. Keep in mind, this is not intended just for faculty. This is an informational guide for anyone across campus. And again, that's from the University of Missouri.
And it's interesting, we had Tammy Bruce on the show earlier this morning, and this, she says, probably wouldn't happen in any other country. Listen.
I think that this is, again, not about elevating anyone else. It's about pagans and Wiccans being used for a political agenda to downgrade what's important to a majority of Americans. I think that this is an anti-tradition action. I think pagans and Wiccans should be very angry about being used by the establishment. And I think that there should be a backlash of, look, the tradition in this country is what allows people to be pagans and Wiccans and to enjoy their lives freely. Good luck doing that in any other country.
Right, and somehow if you're a Christian in this country, too, that you can't say Merry Christmas to somebody or else you're trying to push your Christian faith on other people.
Right, but you get 20 holidays now if you're a Wiccan I mean, I guess that's the one to go with, right? I mean, that's certainly the one. If you're going to pick one, go the one with the most holidays.
Except any religion whose most sacred day is Halloween, I just can't take seriously. I mean, call me a bigot. And I'm not, you know, not offering an editorial against Wiccanism.
Well, that would be more the pagan side of it, right? Would be Halloween.
How many Wiccans can name every Wiccan holiday, or 50% of Wiccan holidays?
I don't know a single Wiccan.
I will say this, because, you know, we're journalists, and I have covered this. I actually went because there was some backlash a number of years ago against Wiccans, and I remember I had to do a story, and I went and interviewed a number of Wiccans, and they say, look, we are the most peaceful individuals. We don't practice crazy things. We're just of the earth. We believe in...
I think that's right. Every Wiccan I've ever known is either a compulsive Dungeons and Dragons player or is a middle-aged, twice-divorced older woman living in a rural area who works as a midwife.
And likes a lot of incense.
Yeah, totally.
Yep, yeah, that's right. Let us know if you've met any Wiccans out there. Let us know. Friends at FoxNews.com.
We reported on a story about Wiccan and pagan holidays being recognized at the University of Missouri. My comments on the story offended a number of people. That was never my intention. And I also violated one of my basic life rules, which is live and let live. The Wiccans have never bothered me or tried to control my life. I should have left them alone. Sorry about that.
Well said.
Dame Sybil Leek.
Don't worry, because you're known as a medium, you're known as a psychic, an astrologer, and also, Sybil, and I have to express what's on the mind of our viewers, also as a witch, And yet for you, it isn't a joke, and it's not an act, and it's not an evil thing, is it?
No, it certainly isn't. And you're very clever.
Thank you, Sybil. But at the same time...
You're a foxy old thing.
Am I getting... Well, let me ask you, what is witchcraft?
For me, it's a religion, and nothing
Dating
to do
back to the
with...
Druid period?
Yes, I'm a Druid. And it goes well back to the time when men were just thinking there must be something greater than themselves.
Even then, in this concept,
Yes,
there was
it
the
has
feeling
to
of a
be.
greater power.
There has to be something
I
greater
agree.
than us. And I'm not anti-religious. I think I'm anti-hypocrisy.
I agree with you.
I think if you're a Roman Catholic, be a very good Roman Catholic. If you're a Protestant, be a very good Protestant. And I think if you're a witch, be a good witch. And I think if you're a Church of Satan, change.
Then Sybil, witchcraft, do I gather, because it's been distorted, is not dealing with Satanism? Because
No.
we're told this, we're
No.
implied this by certain
This
so-called
has been
leaders.
bad publicity in the Middle Ages. And, of course, a terrible concept that has come through because witchcraft was taken underground.
Yes.
And when anything becomes secret and goes underground, a mystique is built up about it. And legend is added to it and added to it. And the things that we don't understand or don't even take the trouble to understand are the things we're afraid of.
That's very true. We usually add a certain mysticism and an occult, which is hidden too.
Really and truly. I tried.
Yes.
But you know, the church is a little funny on exorcism. They have it there, but they don't like to use it because then, if they're taking something away, they have to admit it's there.
Right.
This evening we would like you to speak about tarot and its relation to the goddess. The image of the goddess seemed to be really permeating throughout all of the cards. Can you speak to us about
Yes,
that?
that is correct. If anybody even glances at the major arcana in the tarot deck, they'll see the image of the goddess all the way through it. And I brought out before that even the word tarot, T-A-R-O-T, is actually one of the earliest names of the goddess.
Right.
I mean, 10,000, 25,000 years we're talking here.
25,000?
At least. The name of the goddess was Taru, or Tarut. Then this goddess, as the dynasties and cults changed, she became known by different names. Her next name was Nuth. Then she became known as Mayat. And then she became known as Hathor. Then later Isis, Lilith even, in the Babylonian period. And then Inanna, Sophia. As you move more into the Christian period, the Gnostic Christian period, she becomes known as Sophia, even Circe. And then down into the modern Christian era, she becomes known as Mary, Mary the Madonna. But the primeval, original Madonna was Tarut. And this word, Tarut, is very interesting, actually, for people who are interested in words, because when you pronounce the Tarut with a soft H, you get Taruth, or truth, which is a modern word, truth, that we associate with factuality. And that's exactly right, in a way, because when you turn to the tarot to have a reading, truth is what you're looking for. In fact, the word church also derives directly from the word tarut. When the T's became pronounced with CH in the Anglo-Saxon, as CH instead of T, you put CH on either side of taruch, and you get charuch, or church.
Oh, church, yes.
So actually the word church, and even the word thought, if people are into this, they can discover that even the word thought derived from the word church. And that's interesting that the word church represents the female goddess, because you'll even hear the Pope talking about Holy Mother Church, and now you know why that they're mentioning that, and you know where that title comes from, because literally church is the name of the goddess, the very word.
So there's also certain numerology connected to the goddess force as well, isn't there?
Oh yeah, very much so. Cards, for instance, feature numerology. The divination arts, numerology is a very important divination art. And really, if you think about it, all number is associative with the goddess force. In fact, the entire scientific concept or forte is absolutely unthinkable without the presence of the goddess. A lot of people associate goddess worship with something new agey and unscientific, and you know, very much separated from science. But actually, you couldn't even think of science without the goddess, and I'll be happy to explain why that is. Because whether you're talking about Gaelic Ireland, whether you're talking about you know, the Bronze Age Sumeria, or you're talking about the Etruscans or the Mycenaeans or the Egyptians, or the Chaldeans or the Scandinavians, or the Greeks or the Romans, no matter which of these cultures you're talking about, you're dealing, they have their origins in the matriarchal culture, which, as I said, goes back a lot before the Bronze Age. Western scientists will just talk about the Bronze Age, but actually they have to admit that it goes much further back than that. And it was discovered in ancient times when people started to really get it into their heads that there was a universal order. It was noticed that there was a mathematical and geometrical order in the universe, something that could be measured and contemplated. And the reason why this was discovered was directly because of the female. The female cycle, gestative cycle, was in such synchronicity with the movement of the moon and the earth and the stars that it suddenly people twigged on that there is a universal mathematical order that we can contemplate and understand. But from that point on, it was never forgot that it was through the woman's body that that knowledge came to man. So therefore we couldn't even talk about science today, mathematics, numbering, or any of that stuff without understanding the nature of the goddess. So therefore the female body and the goddess and the woman became then the symbol of the God force. It became the symbol of the universe, and that there is a universal order. And as I said, Christians still speak of Holy Mother Church. And even priests and potentates will wear the flowing robes. People don't think anything of this, but you'll find that all people in positions of authority will wear the flowing robes, and this is because they're presenting themselves. They're basing themselves on the female or on a higher level androgyny, because when you really get into the goddess understanding of what that is, it's not so much about gender, it's about the concept of androgyny, which is a magical principle.
About female and male merging.
Absolutely right. And so it's not so much, as I said, about gender, it's something higher than that. But on a lower level, it is about the nature of feminine and masculine, male and female. But the goddess was pictured or imaged by the ancients in three basic ways. As I said, there's the female body. That was always a symbol of the goddess, obviously. Then there was the earth, right? The fact that the green, fertile earth became one of her primal symbols, or the moon also. But then the third one was the body, the night sky. One of the most ancient ones going back was the actual night sky itself. This passed for a very important image of the goddess, and therefore anything that happened in the sky, which any of the movements of the luminaries, this became, people would study this. So we have astronomy and astrology coming out of goddess worship. And, to do astronomy, you have to know navigation. So again, we find this thing about mathematics and science. And in fact, people who are interested in words, as I said, one of the earliest goddess powers' name was Mayat, which in Sanskrit is the Mahat. And this is one of the reasons where the MA turns up in certain words like mother, matriarch, muse, mandala, matrix, matter, matrimony, measure. All sorts of words like that, like mathematics, master, and matriculation. These words that have the prefix MA, and especially the word mathematics, is to measure forth. It meant to measure forth, because it was never forgot that in goddess worship the concept of measuring was a key thing. What happened was there were basically four great cults in the ancient world. The stellar cult, which has studied the stars, the lunar cult, which was more focused on the moon, and then there was the solar cult. And when the solar cult took over, it was mostly of a masculine paradigm. And there's several reasons for why goddess worship started to recede. But the solar cult basically took over, and they wanted to get rid of the dominion of the feminine, Sophic, what we call the Sophic power. As I said, there's several reasons for this, but the goddess ceased to be a central figure in theocracy because human consciousness was actually changing. When you have a solar paradigm on Earth, it also has an implication for mental thought. And when cognition or thinking became what we call left hemispherical, which is what we're in today, then the feminine gets repressed. So throughout the world, in any culture where the goddess was supreme, was the matriarch, was the creatrix, she started to become secondary to the male god. Originally, the male god was always seen as her progeny, second to her. But actually everything turned around, and the male becomes the alpha image, and she was relegated to the level of consort.
Of submission.
In fact, even worse. Sometimes the goddess was completely removed from divinity and made into a temptress, or even the femme fatale. And this is today why, when you think of God, you're thinking in terms of malehood, which was something completely unknown for millennia upon millennia. This is only something that's very recent in history, to think of God in male terms. A very, very recent phenomenon.
How would you say, how long, how many years has that taken
People
place?
are speculating all the time. Egyptologists, the ones who really know what they're doing, know that this cult, especially with this thing called the precession of the equinoxes, is a sort of a calendar for telling this. And goddess worship goes back at least 25,000 years. You know, all Orthodox religion has tried to get rid of the goddess image completely. I mean, in traditional religion today, women have absolutely no place. So obviously they tried their best to get rid of it completely, but then they found that their religion was very sterile. So then they had to keep the archetype alive, because you can't, you know, completely expurge it. But you could marginalize it, so that we get these parodies of femininity, like the Madonna. And also we get this pernicious idea that there's something weak about femininity.
Yeah.
With this comes the whole idea, the whole cult, the whole movement, that femininity is something weak and meek, which is simply not true. Anyone in the occult traditions, anyone who does martial arts, anyone who's familiar with Taoism will know that this is absolutely not correct, that there's a great strength in the yin force.
Right, because yin is expansive, isn't it?
Well, yeah, there's many, yin is certainly not a weak thing.
Right.
In fact, it is the thing, it is the energy that sustains the universe.
Yeah.
And the Christian Marys, both of them, Martha, Miriam, Marys, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the Mother of Christ, all of these female figures in Orthodox religion are basically watered down, even corruptions of the original alma mater, what they call the alma mater. And a little research will certainly reveal the truth of this. And but we really have to face it that Orthodox religion, like Judeo-Christianity, is basically antithetical to everything to do with the precepts of goddess faith. Really antithetical, and they have, you know, the book of Genesis, for instance, if you read that, there's a clear evidence, you know, where the woman is responsible for the fall.
Yes.
This is what I mean by that.
Yes, yes.
But talking about symbols more specifically, the number 9 has always been associated with the goddess.
Yes.
The numbers,
how is that? Why is that?
There's lots of reasons to do with gestation, the 9 months of gestation, and also the sacred number 7 and 12. Anything to do with a cycle.
Right.
The lunar numbers, 14 and 28, which are the cycles of the moon.
Right.
In fact, the symbol of the circle, which is the ovum.
Yes.
The circle is nothing but the ovum.
Right.
And then the symbol of the vesica, or the womb, what they call the yoni.
Right.
This is one of her symbols, which is why churches, again, have doors shaped like that.
Right.
Because you're going into the most holy.
Yeah, you're going into the most holy, yes.
And the ocean, the night sky, as I said, the cat. I mean, it's an endless subject, you know. But one of the most revered of all of the images associated with the goddess is the tree of life. And this is something that I get into a lot in my classes and my work.
Yes.
Is this image of the tree of life, which is known as the Kabbalistic tree of life. But for thousands and thousands of years, the female body was always known as the tree of life. And the fruits that came from the tree were the ovums that the goddess gave life to, seeds placed in her womb. So when the ancients looked at the night sky, which was her body, and saw the sun and the moon, and at night you see the stars, they saw those as being seeds inside the womb of the great mother goddess. This is how they saw ancient things. Alternatively, and that's in fact one of the reasons why you light fireworks, as we saw at the millennium, people were lighting a lot of fireworks. That's because you're throwing seeds into the body of the goddess to say, well, we want new life. We're hoping for a flourishing tomorrow. So all of these traditions come from goddess worship, because we were literally seen as living inside her body, and that the planets were like embryos, in a way, which would blossom forth and give us life. So people literally felt in the ancient world that they were walking inside the body of the goddess. Now, I don't know what that tells you, but that means that they lived in a very sacred way. And today we're raping the earth and molesting the animals and doing all sorts of things. We've completely moved away from this.
Separating ourselves from ourselves.
Absolutely. When you know that you're living inside the womb of your mother, and that's where you are, the great goddess, that totally changes the way that you perceive the planet. And the Egyptians and the Native American Indians and the Celtic Druids forbade themselves to cut any living thing with a sharp instrument. Compare that to today's horror, you know. And and another way of looking at it also was that the ovum, the tree of life, bears apples. So in ancient days, the apple was always the symbol of the ovum. This is a fact that's been, this has been something that the ancient scholars talked about, because even before these modern books that I mentioned had been written, goddess worship, goddess theories had been written on in the previous centuries, and one of the things that they found was that the symbol of the apple was always a symbol of the ovum. And in fact, in the book of Genesis, when they're talking about the biting of the apple, which the Christians corrupted this myth because they wanted to disempower the female, which they succeeded in doing. I mean, they were absolutely ruthless. For instance, in Gnostic periods, after the advent of Christianity, the Gnostics tried to go back to goddess worship, and they were completely ruthlessly put down. So goddess worship went underground and comes out in alchemy and tarot. So the tarot is a much more profound thing than people realize. But the apple, as I said, was always a symbol of the female ovum. So the biting of the apple, the serpent biting the apple, or the serpent asking someone to bite the apple, was always a symbol of conception, because the serpent has always been the symbol in ancient times of the sperm, the spermatozoon. So when the sperm is coiling around the apple, as you see it, the apple is the ovum. So actually the serpent biting the apple or telling someone to bite the apple was always a covert, cryptic story about conception, which was always the province of what? The goddess, the female.
Right.
So Christians, the founding fathers of Christianity, the patriarchs, needed to get rid of this. They needed to get rid of the supremacy of the goddess.
And they blamed the woman again.
The whole book of Genesis was to do this. It was a propaganda mission to disempower the female. In fact, they didn't do it really that successfully in some senses, because the word Genesis still talks about the goddess, because the word Genesis, as the scholars know, means the genes or the generation of Isis. Genesis, the first book of the Bible, means generation or genes of the goddess Isis.
And Isis was the moon goddess.
Well, no, yes, she was a goddess of the moon when the lunar cult was prevalent on Earth. But see, each cult will use the goddess.
Right.
The goddess is an all-pervasive archetype, and everyone has their own use for it. But the supreme goddess, as I say. So this is, Orthodox religion, and that's why women are prohibited to have any form of doctrinal or clerical or ecclesiastical duty, because they know that if we get back in touch with the feminine, there might be a complete change in the mindset. And so there's been an absolute 100% prohibition within the Catholic Church and within Orthodox religion in general to debar women. And women don't even know really why they're being debarred. This is the whole problem. They need to find out that in the stellar cults, the lunar cult, and the solar cult and the Saturnian cult, women played a very big role. And it's only in a very, what we would call modern history, that the tables have been turned. So today we're going the wrong way about it. We are literally half-witted.
Yes.
We are people who are working with only half of the mind and only a very small part of that. So the right brain is more inclusive. It's holistic. It deals with alchemy. Alchemy sees the whole in every part, whereas physics sees the part within the whole. Physics divides and separates. Physics reduces the divine to the human, whereas alchemy takes the human up to the divine. So there's lots of different ways of looking at it, and alchemy is nothing but tarot. Tarot is the book of life. When you know its operations and its motions, you can bet that it will bring magic into your life.
So if you wanted to share with us a little bit about what types of people come to your class. Do you have Christian people come? Do you have young people come, old people, men, women, from all groups?
Yeah, from all walks of life. There's absolutely nothing segregating about it. There's people from all walks of life. In fact, since I've been working in California, I've found people from a lot of professional spheres. Because again, it has been used, even royalty and people behind the scenes of government have been using the divination arts to empower themselves.
Absolutely.
And I know this because I practice it, and I've given readings to people who are on the professional level, the executive level, and they seem to be benefiting from it. So it's becoming more aware now as the New Age movement has helped people to realize that there is a very practical use for this. I mean, we don't have time anymore in life for something that's not practical.
Right.
And of course, it turns out that the tarot is very practical as well. It can help you in relationships, in business, in any kind of financial dealings that you're doing. It deals with problem solving. It deals you in family situations, and of course, ultimately in your spiritual development is what it's for. But it is a very practical oracle. And the feminine, in the ancient days, the feminine was connected with the oracles.
Absolutely.
You know, when in Delphi, in Cappadocia, and all of these places in the world that were connected with sacredness, and in Celtic Ireland as well. The goddess was connected with the oracles. But you have a living oracle within you, and we in this world today, especially in the 21st century now, we need to get in touch with that oracle. And the tarot is one of the most important ways of doing that.
So it sounds like tarot is a wonderful way to invoke the goddess and the divine energy within yourself, and yet become closer to your source.
Absolutely. In fact, it does that very quickly. It does that. It helps you get in touch with your inner source, which is the goddess force. But it takes somebody of integrity and wisdom to explain it, because there's a lot of charlatanism. There's a lot of superficial research that's gone into it, and a lot of fetish tarots and all sorts of things out there. But there's an authentic tarot, and there's an authentic way to teach it, which is connected with Kabbalah, with numerology, and astrology. And that's what we go in.
Shakti. That's the energy which flows outward from God. So Shakti flows outward from God and comes to you. That's what they believe. Okay. That's Shakti. Shakti, incidentally, means wife. Now this is the kicker. And we're going to get to the point here why traditional Judaism was very, very hostile to the Kabbalah. Do you know why? Feminine. All feminine. It is the feminine God. And nobody, including Christians, can deal with that. What do we say today? Tammuz came to the earth, wound up in the netherland down in the bowels of the earth to save the people who were captive. Who had to come down to save him and bring him up? Ishtar, the goddess, his sister, Ishtar. What that mean? Jesus Christ down in the bowels of the earth. Who had to save him? The Holy Spirit. Who is the Holy Spirit? Feminine. It is the feminine of the part of the God. This, you know that you can't, in most churches you can't. They wouldn't even allow a woman to stand up on a pulpit. And do you know they have totally missed it because they've taken macho control of the whole thing. And if anything, if you want to talk about women's lib, why was it necessary? Most of it is necessary because of the sexist discrimination that against women that originated with religion. And yet here it is. The splendor of the Kabbalah, of which most of your Bible is written in, the tree of life, Shakti, is God's wife. She is the one that moves in and does the work. Shakti. The pineal gland of the brain, which is the corridor for the messenger, is the single eye of ancient writings. In ancient times they would call it the single eye. It's the pineal gland of the brain. It's the hallway or the corridor from which light enters the body. The pineal gland, if you look it up in a scientific document or whatever, is referred to as the body's light receptor, the single eye. And then Jesus comes along, and in Matthew 6:22 said, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye be single, your body will fill with light." And there's the reference to the single eye. There's the reference to the single eye, meaning your body will fill with light. The Bible says God is light. And Jacob in the ancient Old Testament said, "I've seen God face to face, and I'll call the place Peniel." But this is the amazing part to me. The amazing part to me is that religious people pay no attention to this whatsoever. They don't even consider this. The point in the body where God is met face to face is declared by the religious to be the opening for devils. And they'll tell you, don't do that. Don't get into that meditation. Don't go downstairs with all those crazy people. You'll open your mind to devils. Well, what do they mean by that? They totally disregard the fact that Jesus said if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. It's in the Bible. They don't consider that. They totally disregard the fact that Jacob says, "I have seen God face to face. I'll call the place Peniel." They disregard that. In the Vatican, on the Sistine Chapel, there's a drawing by I guess Michelangelo, and the drawing is of angels and all this. But as you look at it from a distance, and I'll have a picture for this to show you shortly, it's the human brain. And right outside the front door of where that drawing is, there's a cement statue of a pine cone. And somebody knows what's going on. But that isn't revealed to the average person. It's just a statue of a pine. Why do you have a statue of a pine cone in the front door and then a painting which is obviously a symbolic painting of the human brain because it's talking about the pineal gland of the brain. The very, very same thing here that we're discussing. So instead of understanding this, and instead of understanding about the pineal gland of the brain and sharing it with people so that people can find, they talk about where did their traditional values go, and they want to put prayer back in school, and all of the other distractions that cloud the fact that they're actually turning their back on the very Bible that they revere as sacred. They all carry Bibles around, but what it says in the Bible they don't want anything to do with. because the Bible or God is not near as important as religion to them.
I'm sure you do. Morgan Stott. I'm a High Priestess of Morning Star Coven and co-founder of Boulder Pagan Alliance, amongst numerous other things.
A High Priestess?
A High Priestess, yes.
Should I be intimidated?
Maybe. You'll find out by the end of the 60 minutes.
I'm sure I will. And what is your answer to the first question? Are pagans Satanists? Because a lot of people think they are.
Yes, a lot of people do think we are Satanists. Part of the reason is because of our symbol. This is a pentagram, and you see it a lot, used in a lot of different ways. Usually when you talk about Satanists, you see it this way.
Yes.
And the reason is because the Satanists take everything and invert it or pervert it, and this symbol is a pretty obvious symbol. You rarely see the inverted cross the same way you do the inverted pentagram. This particular pentagram is done in all the colors with the spirit, air, fire, water, and earth. And what it symbolizes is the four dimensions or directions and spirit, with the spirit above. So the single point is usually up.
And what's in the center?
Life.
Life?
Life in general.
All right.
Yeah, you are the center. In older traditions, they were worn upside down when you started, because it showed that your mundane world was still ruling your spiritual, and as you progressed along the path, you became more spiritual over your mundane world, your spiritual world. But that's where some of the symbolism comes along, and that Satanism has taken. And much of the history of it comes from a time period where anything that wasn't of the church was of Satan.
Yes.
But we are not Satanists.
The Middle Ages, you mean?
Dark Ages.
Dark Ages?
Yeah, Inquisition. And a lot of it is Hollywood. Hollywood has had a heyday with what we really are.
Rosemary's Baby. And,
oh yeah, they love
it. Disney really.
A movie about what witches really were would be deucedly boring. It wouldn't sell real well. But as far as strictly are we Satanists, we don't believe Satan exists. We are our roots go back to a time period well before Satanism. Satan, the concept of Satan itself actually didn't come into existence till 462 AD. So Satan is technically a Christian god versus a pagan god. It did not come in until after Christianity.
Until after Christianity. Yes. Isn't Satan described in the Bible in earlier time?
Actually, he is described in the Bible.
He is, but not as the horned beast that he is later. The actual description was put in 462 in a papal conclave of Constantine II. And basically the way it was worded was to catch all of the pagan gods. Most of the old pagan gods are antlered or horned gods. And so by making it an evil horned god, you pretty much caught all of the pagan gods.
You caught them all that way.
Yeah.
And the tail with a sharp point and the pitchfork?
That comes from one of the specific gods.
It does?
Well, some of it. The pitchfork, not per se, but Baphomet is a tailed. He's one of the gods that they used early.
DJ, would you introduce yourself and respond to the second question, which was, do pagans curse people?
My name is DJ Kirby.
Yes.
I'm a ceremonial magician. I am co-founder of the Circle of Lavender Fire, which is a gay male Wiccan circle, and I guess you'd call me an elder.
An elder?
An elder.
All right.
No, we don't curse people except maybe in traffic.
In traffic. And then it's a different kind of cursing.
I think we all curse people in traffic.
Yes. But I mean, do you actually put hexes on people and...
Well, no.
No.
It's considered unethical. The one rule by which Wiccans and Kabbalists and pagans in general live their life is, and it harm none, do what thou wilt. Which means you can't hurt anyone, and a curse is a form of hurting someone. So it's completely against the first law.
So I couldn't get you guys to curse the IRS for me on income tax day? No?
Not that it hasn't been considered. Not that it hasn't been considered, but no. It's bad karma. What you do comes back to you. It's against the law, and it harm none, which includes yourself. And
it's bad karma.
Karma is, among pagans, a universally accepted law that what you do comes back to you. It may not be in the same form, but the energy you send out will return to you.
What goes around comes around?
Basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
As you sow, so shall you reap.
Well, now, I've heard the word karma used in association with Hinduism, Buddhism.
Well, that's where the word itself comes from.
My 13-year-old daughter uses this wannabe terminology all the time.
Yes, there are a lot of there are a lot of wannabes out there, and there's a lot of them that read one or two, usually really bad books, and think they know what they're doing. And most of the, quote, Satanists out there are doing the same thing. They're reading one or two bad books, and they're what they call pseudos. So they'd be pseudo-Satanists or pseudo-witches. Because they really don't know what they're talking about yet. Half of the kids are into shock value. Going home and telling Mom, gee, I just became a witch today, is likely to get a rise out of her.
Get some attention.
That would get Mom's attention, yes, especially if Mom is a fundamentalist.
Yeah. It could be a great way to get attention, to get people shocked. To be different.
Has tremendous shock value.
Great shock value.
There are three kinds of witches. There are, what are they? Jewelry?
There's the ones that are in it for the jewelry. Just think wearing the pentagrams and the black clothes is really cool.
Yeah, they show up in black everything with lots of jewelry and weird makeup.
And crystals and everything.
Yeah.
Morgan, how about you? What do you do?
I'm a witch in my real life.
This is your real. It's part of your real life.
Yeah, that's
yes.
what I do for a living versus my real life is a different thing.
What do you do?
I train horses.
Is that why your name's Morgan?
Yes, it is. That's where it came from.
It really is.
It is where it came from. When I was a teenager, I rode a Morgan horse and I drove a Morgan car, and I got dubbed that Morgan girl, and it stuck.
It stuck.
It stuck. So it has been there ever since.
For a high priestess, you're really funny.
Our coven, it's a standing rule in our coven, very strict rule that you have to be able to pun. You have to be able to do double entendres. We once decided that if we couldn't do either puns or double entendres in any meeting, if we decided we could not do any of these things or jokes in a meeting, we'd be totally silent. We wouldn't know what to do. Humor is a very important part of the religion.
If you can't laugh at your own religion, it's no longer.
You're taking yourself too seriously.
Got to lighten up.
Many of the religious fundamental religious right, are contributing to things like Amendment 2. To limit people's right to constitutional rights.
They preach book burning. Some of them have gone so far as to preach the murder of gays and witches and Jews and lesbians, and they call themselves Christians. That's not Christianity, that's churchianity.
They're spending money to produce videos saying that witches are out to eat their children, take over the government, kill all the Christians, burn all the books. We don't do that. We actually, most pagans are terrible bibliophiles.
Are you folks endangered by these kinds?
Yes, I actually have an experience. I belong to a coven in Hawaii. I was in the military, and a friend of mine there came that close to being burned at the stake, and this was in '92.
You're serious?
I am very
serious. There are people now who are losing their children simply because somebody heard them admit that yes, they were a witch, or they followed the Wiccan path.
You mean the courts ruled against them? How did they lose?
They have lost custody in the courts, not in this state. This state's real good, but in Texas there have been, and there's one in the court right now in Arkansas. And the only reason they did it is because the woman, or the mother, was a witch. That was their reasoning.
It happened not too long ago in Colorado Springs in '88, I think it was. I don't remember.
Yes.
I think it was '88. A man let some of his co-workers know that he was a practicing witch, and it took several years through the courts before the court said that this is a valid religion, and you couldn't take his children away because of it.
Yeah, it does still happen.
Losing jobs, a lot of
people lose jobs.
Which is part of the reason why we're so enthusiastic and happy to be on the show is Halloween is when everyone starts thinking, oh, witches and the green skin and big noses and warts.
I don't think we're too green, are we?
This is when we do our this is when we do most of our outreach. PR work, saying, no, we don't do this. We're really nice people.
But calling yourselves witches doesn't sound to me like really good PR.
Well,
because of all these stereotypes.
We are trying to reclaim a history. The original witches were the healers, the midwives, the old woman of the village that had the midwives and the herbal knowledge.
And the priests and the shamans.
Yeah, and took care of the village. That person was somebody we'd like to reclaim that name for. The word witch means to shape or to bend. We're shaping our lives, which also leads to being in control of your life, the personal responsibility for your own life.
Personal responsibility.
Personal responsibility is a very big part of the religion,
Yes.
personal growth.
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons that the Inquisition was so against the pagan religions, is because you were in charge of your own life.
Yeah,
and
you
it
weren't.
gave you control to monitor and develop your spiritual self.
So the church was no longer in control of their lives?
No, the church was trying to control.
Yes, yes, but if a
spiritual
person
Before
bought
that,
in-
Before that, a person was in control.
The pagans or the heathens originally, were literally heathen and pagan both mean of the country.
Of the
Of the heath.
It's because
Heathens are
they
on
were
the heath.
Out in the country, they were the last to be affected
Yeah.
by the large
urban.
the large church activities.
Christianity went through
during
the
Dark
nobility
Ages.
first.
Through what?
The nobility.
The nobility.
So that
Yeah.
once you have the king or queen or whoever converted, they could force, by the sword, conversion.
Most of what happened through Inquisition really had nothing to do with Christianity. It had to do with power. There were people within the church, mostly men, because the church really
Yes,
only
that's
deals
right.
with men. In fact, at that time, in that era, women didn't have souls. But it was a matter of control.
And if someone
anybody you
became-
couldn't control, you got rid of.
All right.
And fear is a very fast way of making people do what you want them to do. I always, when I needed quiet time, I came from a very abusive family, and escape was necessary. I lived in the country. I would go into the woods behind the house. I would disappear into the woods, and I often, as I went to the property line, would leave everything I had with me. Clothes, everything, right there at the property line, because I was making a change. I was leaving everything that was bad behind and stepping into this world which was safe.
How old were you then, Morgan?
8, 9, maybe.
Very young.
Very young. And then I had a couple of trees that I would go talk to, basically, and make circles in or around, because you make a stone circle, and it's like having a little wall around you. I found a group in Boulder, a shop that had tarot decks. It was called Covent Gardens. And through them, I met people who, at that point, were ceremonial.
Yes.
And I started to learn from them and found that I didn't really like the ceremonial. It's more strictly magic and not the religion. But through them, I met other witches and found out that all these things that I'd done and felt had names to them. There really was a whole group of people out there doing the same thing. And it's called coming home. Most of us have the same kind of
Coming
experience.
home.
It's not you're not converted into paganism. You come home
Yeah,
to
we
it.
do not allow conversion or proselytizing.
But there's a feeling when you come home of this is where
This
I
is
belong.
right. This is where I've always been. I just didn't know the words for it.
This is
Or
home.
I
This is
took
my.
a
These
little-
people are my family.
I took a wander, and I've come back.
Is paganism catching on? Is it growing in
It is the
numbers?
fastest growing religion in America.
The fastest
It's
growing
actually the
religion
fastest growing religion in the world.
in the world.
It is the, and it
that's
is the
amazing.
leading religion in the world if you consider the fact that all the Buddhists and the Hindus and all of those fall into the pagan category.
Yes.
One of the things I'd like to mention real quick is that,
Real quick.
is that you see this panel with all the men and only one female, where in reality, because it is a nature-based and a goddess-based
Yes.
religion, the majority of followers are female.
It's predominantly a female.
It's predominantly
movement, you're saying.
female.
Yeah. Well, at least it's very
it's-
popular
Yes.
with women because it
It empowers women.
exactly.
And the men who are drawn to it are men who respect women and women's power. They're feminists.
Go women!
all right, all right. The Alan Aldas, the Phil Donahues.
And a lot of gays
Those
and
types.
lesbians are drawn to paganism.
Yes.
It's
because
accepting.
It's there is no judgment. The goddess does not say, you're gay,
You're going to
you're
hell.
going to hell.
So
There
gays
is no
and
hell.
lesbians can find a place then
Yes.
in
Right.
paganism.
Because the way we see it is, we were created this way. That's
are
the way we
all
are.
this way.
Whether you're gay, black,
We are all part
whatever.
of divine, and divine is not wrong.